This week, India's education minister resigned, not over money and not over anything in his private life. He resigned because of a single sheet of paper, the question paper for one exam. That exam decides who becomes a doctor in India. This year, 2.25 million people sat down to take it. Behind it, there are about 130,000 medical school places, roughly one place for every 18 students. For the other 17, the answer is wait a year and try again, or let the dream go. A sheet of paper with that much power over that many lives is worth extraordinary money. The last time it leaked, 2 years ago, investigators said copies were selling for more than 3 million rupees each, around $36,000, in a country where that is many years of a good salary. And here is the strange part of this story. India created this exam deliberately 10 years ago as a weapon against corruption in medical admissions. It worked against the corruption it was aimed at. But it also gathered the hopes of 2 million families onto one document. And that quietly turned the document itself into one of the most valuable pieces of paper in the country. On the 3rd of May, more than 2 million students took the National Medical Entrance Exam. It is called NEET. 9 days later, the government canceled it. Investigators had found that a so-called guess paper, a coaching shop prediction of likely questions sold before exam day, matched the real questions too closely to be a guess. The case went to federal investigators, and every one of those students was told to take the exam again. The retake came in late June, and within days, new leak claims were circulating around it. The testing agency says those particular claims were fake. True or not, by then, trust had run out. Through July, a protest grew into the largest youth movement India has seen in over a decade. It calls itself the cockroach movement, after remarks widely reported in which a senior judge described unemployed young Indians as cockroaches and parasites. A well-known engineer and educator, Sonam Wangchuk, went on a hunger strike that lasted 26 days. When police moved him into a hospital against his will, the crowds multiplied. On the 25th of July, the education minister Dharmendra Pradhan handed in his resignation. The protesters went home, but the exam system itself did not change that day, and that system is the rest of this story. There is a reason trust ran out so fast. This had all happened before, recently, and in detail. 2 years ago, in 2024, the same exam leaked the day before test day. That time, police traced it. An organized network had obtained the paper through a gap in how it was transported and stored, and sold it copy by copy at the price you heard a minute ago. That year's results showed 67 students sharing the very top rank, a result the exam had never produced before. India's response sounded strong. Parliament passed a new law against exam fraud, up to 10 years in prison and fines of up to 10 million rupees. Cheating on a public exam became one of the most heavily punished nonviolent crimes in the country. That law was fully enforced when the 2026 paper leaked anyway. And that is the detail worth pausing on. When you raise the punishment and the crime happens again on schedule, punishment is not the variable that matters. What matters is the price. A stolen exam paper is worth whatever buyers will pay, and the buyers are 2 million families staring at odds of 1 in 18. Against a prize like that, 10 years of prison is not a wall. It is a cost of doing business. To see where that price came from, go back 10 years, because this exam is not an accident. It is a reform, and the problem it was built to solve was real. Before 2016, India did not have one medical entrance exam. It had around 80 of them, separate exams run by states and individual universities. That system was rotten in its own way. Private colleges sold seats for so-called capitation fees, officially donations, sometimes running to tens of thousands of dollars. Families with money bought their children into medicine. Families without watched it happen. So in 2016, India's Supreme Court ordered a clean sweep. One national exam for every medical college in the country, government, private, all of them. One paper, one merit list, no side doors. The explicit goal was to end the corruption and the seat selling. And on those terms, it largely succeeded. The side doors closed. But look at what the same decision did to the geometry of the system. 80 exams meant 80 smaller prizes, each worth stealing only to a local market. One exam means a single prize, national in scale. The money that once flowed through a college's back door did not disappear. The demand behind it moved upstream to the one document that now controls everything. So here's the mechanism. In one sentence, the value of stealing an exam equals the stakes for one student multiplied by the number of students standing behind the same paper. You can make that sheet of paper cheap in two ways: lower the stakes or split the crowd. India's design does the opposite of both. The stakes could hardly be higher. For millions of families, this one score is the difference between a doctor's life and starting over. And the crowd could hardly be larger. Every candidate in the country on the same morning answering the same questions. That does two dangerous things at once. First, it sets up a contest the defenders have to win every single time. The exam's guardians spend on sealed boxes, tracking, secure printing. The thieves only need to find one weak link once, anywhere in a chain that reaches thousands of exam centers. In 2024, the weak link was one storage room in one town. Defense has to be perfect everywhere. Attack only has to succeed somewhere. And second, this is what turns a crime into a national crisis. The same centralization that created the prize also removed the walls between failures. When one of 80 exams leaked, one region resat a test. When the one exam leaks, there is no smaller unit to contain the damage. 2.25 million people lose their exam on the same day. And every family in the country learns at the same moment that the system can be bought, which is exactly the belief that ended up on the streets of Delhi this month. None of this means India should simply tear the exam down, but the design space is bigger than the current argument, which is mostly guard the paper better versus punish thieves harder. Both of those keep the paper priceless. Here are 3 designs that make it worth less. Each one works. Each one has a price. The first, split the prize in time. In the United States, the college admission test is offered 7 times a year, and the version for graduate schools draws each student's questions from a large rotating pool. Steal one paper, and you have stolen one sitting out of many. A suspicious score can be checked against a student's other attempts, and next month, there is a fresh test. The value of any single theft collapses. The price, the whole security apparatus, printing, sealing, escorting, guarding, now has to run several times a year for 2 million people at a time. Different sittings must be made exactly equally difficult, and every difference between them becomes a lawsuit. And the American tests have had their own leaks in Asia. Smaller prizes are still prizes. This design shrinks the crime. It does not abolish it. The second is stranger, and a real country ran it for decades. In the Netherlands, from the 1970s, you first had to clear a qualifying bar, and above it, medical school places were assigned by weighted lottery. Good grades multiplied your chances. A top student had 3 times the odds of an average one, but nobody's future hung on one final mark. Think about what that does to a stolen paper. If crossing the bar is what matters and the rest is chance, a leaked answer key buys you far less. The exam stops being a single door and becomes a filter. The price is written in Dutch history. In 1996, a straight A student was rejected 3 times by the lottery, and the country's sense of fairness revolted. The lottery was wound down and eventually banned outright. Then, in 2023, the ban was lifted because the interviews and tests that replaced it turned out to carry biases of their own. This design asks a society to say something uncomfortable out loud. Beyond a certain point, we cannot measure who deserves it more, and pretending we can has costs too. The third design is the one India already knows because it is the system it abolished. Many exams instead of one, 80 doors instead of a single gate. A leak in one place stays in one place, and its price is not hypothetical either. It is the reason NEET exists. Scattered admissions meant seat selling, capitation fees, and 1,000 small corruptions no investigator could see at once. India traded 1,000 invisible failures for one enormous visible one. That trade can be argued both ways, but it was a trade, not a rescue. So, back to the minister and his resignation. The crowds in Delhi won what they asked for, but notice what did not change on the day he left. The exam is still one exam. The paper is still worth more than a house. The conditions for the next leak are all still in place. The comfortable version of this story has a villain, a careless official, a criminal gang, a negligent agency. The uncomfortable version is about geometry. Any system that pushes 2 million lives through one door on one morning makes the key to that door worth stealing at industrial scale. Guard it harder, and you have only made the theft more expensive, not impossible. And this pattern is not Indian. Every country decides how much of a life one test is allowed to determine and how many futures stand behind each paper. Those two numbers multiplied are the bounty on that sheet of paper. So the next time a reform promises to end corruption by putting everything in one place, one exam, one register, one gate, it may well be right. Just ask the question India is asking this week. What will that one place be worth to a thief? And who pays on the morning it is stolen?